Hello everyone to the India-Japan Dialogue with Praveen Dogra. Today my guest is someone who has spent more than 40 years in promoting academic exchange and mutual understanding between India and Japan. His extensive research on Japanese management practices along with his extraordinary Japanese language skills, he has published many dictionaries and translated many publications from Japanese to English. He has also done interpretation for many high-level dignitaries, including that of the Prime Ministers of India and Japan. Personally, he is a sensei and a mentor to me. I am deeply influenced by his learnings and I still practice them in my day-to-day work. I can go on and on about his introduction, about his illustrious career, but I think it's time to finally introduce my guest today, Professor Prem Motwani. Thank you so much, Sensei, for giving us your time today and an opportunity for all of us to understand your views and thoughts about the special partnership between India and Japan.
No, I think the pleasure is mine and good to connect with you after some time.
Thank you so much, Sensei. Sensei, first of all, please accept my heartiest congratulations on receiving one of the highest decorations from the government of Japan, the Order of the Rising Sun, gold rays with neck ribbon. Sensei, it is one of the highest decorations any foreign national can receive from the government of Japan for your significant contributions in strengthening the bilateral relations between India and Japan, Sensei. What myself and all our viewers would firstly like to know, Sensei, how has this journey been for you? How did you first get connected to Japan, its language and its culture? And what is the difference between our relations at that point of time and what they are now, Sensei?
Yeah, actually, I was in Delhi University and I did my eco honors. And after that, I wanted to join JNU because international economics was very famous subject there. So I went to JNU and that very year, Japanese language course had started. And I was advised that if you want to research on Japan, you have to first learn the language. So that's how I got into doing my graduation all over again with Japanese major, and then did my masters also. And then for my MPhil and PhD, I went back to School of International Studies to do my MPhil and PhD. And I worked on modernization of Japan. And then when later, I started teaching at the postgraduate level.
So this was in JNU, Sensei?
JNU itself, yes.
Okay.
After I completed my masters, I got placement in JNU itself and started teaching. And simultaneously, I did my research.
Right,
so I started teaching Japanese, post-war Japan, Japanese economy, bilateral relations, Japanese management. And the difference, School of International Studies also had the same courses, but we were teaching in Japanese to our students, so that was the difference.
So Sensei, apart from the trade and economics, what has been one significant good change since the time you started teaching and right now? What has been that one factor which has actually propelled our relationship forward, Sensei?
No, so again, it goes back to the same thing. You see, as far as the India-Japan government-to-government relationship is there, we have the 1998, we have India-Japan, global partnership, which became subsequently strategic partnership. So that is more because of the geopolitical reasons, not that I would say because of the direct interest of the Japanese companies in India.
So in that sphere, I guess the governments are working much more closely than they were ever before. We can say that.
Yes, and Japanese companies, one clear trend is there that unless Japanese government support is not there, they don't really enter those markets much. So purely say, of course, Indian market is very attractive for any foreign company. So Japanese companies were interested, and in the 80s when Maruti and Suzuki and Honda came in, so a whole lot of their vendors came. Yes. So that itself,
got in a lot of investment.
Yes,
into India.
Accounted for some 300-400, their vendors and
right.
two-tier vendors and all. So a whole lot of joint ventures happen. But I tell you, there is another aspect to it that in the 80s, you would know that Japanese management practices became very popular in the West, I mean in US.
Very interesting, Sensei, that you mentioned the Japanese management practices and this book which you have just published last year, Becoming World Class Lessons from Made in Japan. In fact, you have been a pioneer in promoting Japanese management practices in India and theories like TPM and TQM. I think you are a master in these theories, and a lot of manufacturing companies in India have actually benefited from the teachings you have done. And I was just going through this book, Sensei, before the interview, and there's some of the most pertinent questions which you're trying to answer in this book, Sensei, is, I think the biggest one which I wanted to know the answer to is how to make in India work. How do we make India, an attractive manufacturing destination, Sensei, and especially to the Japanese companies who are so highly skilled in their manufacturing capabilities, Sensei?
Okay, let me put it in the right perspective. By no stretch of imagination, I can call myself an expert of Japanese management.
Since you're just being humble.
No, I tell you why. In the 80s when Honda and Suzuki came, and although it was in the Suzuki was in the public sector, so there was a great amount of interest or an eye-opener for Indian companies that how different the management was.
Sure.
So by word of mouth it spread, and CII started conducting some seminars on Japanese management, and some Japanese experts started visiting India. And then there are 2 awards which you just mentioned about. TPM has a number of awards, and around that time, early 80s, Japanese management had made inroads into US also, or even Europe, because they were losing out. Japan was dominating the whole world.
With the Toyotas and the Hondas,
Yes,
the brands.
yes. So when they entered US, it was an eye-opener for them also that, they need to change their management practices to really survive. Because you would recall that in 1979, if I am not wrong, Ezra F. Vogel wrote, Japan as number 1. Although it never became number 1.
But actually Toyota overtook American automobile companies as the highest selling cars in Japan.
They are still number 1 that way. When Japanese management practices came to be known in India, there was a lot of interest in that. And of course, those joint ventures which happened through that also, they came to know that yes, it is different. And then this TPM has its own awards, various levels of awards, up to the world class. And TQM has Deming application and the Japan Quality Medal, 2 levels of awards. So all the manufacturers, started challenging.
So this was happening in the late 80s in India?
No, 90s.
90s.
Yeah. So the first company which challenged TPM award was 95.
Okay.
That was Birla Group. And then 98, it was TVS which got the Deming.
Right.
Okay. Now, when the Deming audit started in India, many of these professors were known to me because I was doing my research in Japan. So they said that you know the subject, you know the language, so why don't you help us? Now, you see, in audits, the outsiders are not allowed. I mean, only the company people can attend the audit. No outsider is allowed, and even the number is restricted. So they said that you assist us as interpreter for this. Okay, so that's how it started, because I had no industry experience per se, so that's how I started seeing Japanese management from close quarters. The auditors would audit, I was there and I could see the gaps. And I used to visit Japan almost 2 to 3 times a year. And all my summer vacations at JNU I used to spend in Japan. So there was time when I underwent a whole lot of courses on Japanese management and developed my in-depth understanding of this. And then during those audits I used to see that what the big cultural gap is there. And then also when I went to Japan, I used to, through these organizations, visit various companies in Japan and talk to their management, how they really deploy these management practices back home. made me, kind of understand that yes, there is a huge gap between even those practices which they try to deploy for 4 to 5 years before they challenge the audit. So my conclusion was that the ecosystem in Indian companies doesn't exist to really take it to the desired level.
Is that still the case, Sensei?
Yeah,
at this
maybe
point,
there are
or
some,
has it changed little bit? Has it improved?
yes, some companies have changed.
Yes.
Some big names are there. I mean, they have done, but then the problem in India is that because of the high attrition rate of middle management,
Yes, Sensei.
that knowledge doesn't stay with the
Stay
company.
with the company.
So after 4 5 years, you find that these
Suddenly a vacuum.
yeah, so these, they are individual specific, so they die down. I mean, being in JNU, I couldn't have taken up any consultancy work. So when I retired, then I started doing this. And I'd been wanting to write this book for a
Yes.
long time to really tell people that how Japanese management practices developed in Japan and how they used it to make Japan, as number one.
And I think
maybe.
it couldn't have come at a better time, Sensei. I mean, because of this Make in India initiative by the government, and I think manufacturing, you see a wave of manufacturing coming to India, and they are doing all the new sort of things like the IoT, the Japanese management principles. For all the viewers, I will share the details of this book. It has been endorsed by His Excellency Satoshi Suzuki, who is the current ambassador from Japan to India.
So basically, in this book, I have written about, what has been the response of West to Japanese management, to the extent, they have changed their own practices. But in India, if you talk about, we have not changed any practices. So
we still have a long way to go, I
long way
guess,
to go.
Sensei. What is the summary of this?
And last 3 4 years, Japanese companies' number has peaked
remained
at 14
stagnant.
50 years.
So, Sensei, India and Japan have a lot of common things culturally and historically. Our value system is somewhat similar, but I do see our workplace practices and our approach to business is slightly different. Can you highlight some points where Japan has actually contributed to India in terms of their manufacturing or workplace habits, and which India can adopt to probably increase its work efficiency generally?
Yes, I mean, Japan has been playing a very important role in creating some models for manufacturing. I mean, they have initiated some very good programs like VLFM, Visionary Leaders for Manufacturing. This was started in 2006, if I'm correct. And first it was done for large companies, and then it was done for medium scale companies. And I think 2,000 people have been trained, where Professor Shoji Shiba was, coming and guiding them. And then they used to even travel to Japan. Okay, so it was a very good program for, the senior management and middle management. And then they have gyms, they have set up some 13, 14 gyms. These are the Japan-India manufacturing. Schools, I would say, which can be a role model for ITIs. Okay, so where they have developed the curriculum and even the workshops and all, they have developed, which all industries can really adopt.
And a lot of big Japanese companies have probably taken that gyms
so
initiative.
these are set up in, like Suzuki has set up 2 of them.
And I think Daikin is also one.
Daikin is one of them, Tata Hitachi is another one.
Okay.
So a lot of companies have set up, and they are very good. I've went and
So I think
gone and
it's
seen
really
them.
contributing towards the skill development of our labor
Yes,
force.
yes. So what content? Because you see, even ITI graduates, they do not find jobs in India. I mean, when they pass out, it's so theoretical knowledge that the industry don't. I mean, what to talk of ITIs? Even engineers, 85% of our engineers are unemployable, right? That's what the industry stalwarts say. So Japan has created the models,
These programs which are
yes,
helping
and then
India.
for engineers and all, they have developed this endowed courses, programs in universities. 5 universities they have already set up. So the basic idea was to promote Indian manufacturing.
Sensei, one very important industry I wanted to discuss with you today is the IT industry. India has so many IT engineers, and these days I have seen a trend that a lot of engineers are looking towards Japan as a possible destination for them to work. Any advice for them, Sensei, from your side?
Yeah, Japan has a very serious shortage of IT professionals. I mean, according to one report, some 300,000 engineers they
quite a
require
big number.
in maybe 2 years time. So there is a big demand for IT professionals. But then in Japan, as I said earlier also, without knowing the language, it is very difficult to even, I mean, you are working for 8 hours, the rest of the time you have to live there in the society, so knowing the language is always better. But then at the same time, Japanese language is not so easy. That's the challenge. But then yes, some people have done well and they are picked up, and then while you are working there, you are in that environment, so you can pick up faster.
And the wages in Japan are also quite good compared to...
Very good wages, So I think these IT professionals can really look at Japan during present times when, say US is becoming increasingly difficult to enter. So Japan is one country which is very safe, very good, work environment. Yes, a lot of discipline is there, but then yes, very good place to be in. And I always tell my young students that after you pass out, go and work for 3 years in Japan. You will be a better person, and will be a better employee when you come back.
Thank you so much, Sensei. All the aspiring IT engineers will find this advice very useful, and definitely I think they can hone their skills in Japanese language once they are in Japan. And I think the wages are quite attractive. So it is quite an attractive destination for IT engineers.
Yes, definitely, yes. I really hope that more people go there and pick up some of the best elements of their work culture, which I really admire.
先生、今日貴重な時間をいただき本当にありがとうございます。最後の質問になりますが、今年は日英国交樹立70周年となりますが、これから55年10年先は日英関係についてどういう期待をお持ちでしょうか。
いや、私は個人的には日英関係はですね、もっともっと進歩してほしいですね。もちろん政府間の関係は以前から順調で、ますます今中国とか他のいわゆる地政学的な観点からは、より密接になってきてるんですけど、問題は一般レベルですね、草の根レベルで。そうですね。だから人の交流はですね、それほどないですね。それはまだまだ少ないんですか、他の国と比べたら。そうですね。はい。それと、一番いいのはやはり企業がですね、もっとインドに進出してもっと投資し、でそこからやっぱり従業員がですね、日本のそういう就労文化について学び、でそれがもっと社会に浸透してほしいなというふうに思います。
ありがとうございます。